In the twilight years of the Second World War, when Japan's empire trembled on the brink of collapse, a new weapon emerged, not forged of steel or fire, but of human will and sacrifice. It was called Takatai, the Special Attack Units, known to the world as the Kamikaze. These were young men, many barely out of adolescence, who strapped themselves into planes loaded with fuel and explosives with one mission: to die. Their final words, left in letters, diaries, and poems, remain haunting echoes across time, fragments of human voices carried into the silence after impact. By 1944, Japan faced desperation. The once proud Imperial Navy had been shattered in battles from the Coral Sea to Midway, and American carriers pressed ever closer to the home islands. The Philippines campaign was grinding down Japanese resistance, and with every island lost, the homeland drew nearer to Allied guns. Against overwhelming industrial might, Tokyo's leaders turned to the unthinkable: organized suicide attacks. To Admiral Takejiro Onishi, the architect of the Kamikaze Corps, these men represented Japan's final shield. "There is no other way to defend our nation," he told his officers, "than to plunge into the enemy with our planes." The volunteers came in waves, though not always from free will. Some were idealists, shaped by years of nationalist education that praised sacrifice to the emperor as the highest honor. Others, quietly hesitant, felt the pressure of their peers, their commanders, and the eyes of an entire nation. One pilot wrote in his diary, "If I refuse, who will protect my family's honor? Who will protect Japan?" They were given farewell banquets, cups of sake, and headbands inscribed with the rising sun. To the outside world, they were celebrated as heroes. To themselves, many wrestled with terror, longing, and resignation. The letters they left behind reveal this hidden struggle. Ensign Maso Kan, just 22 years old, wrote to his parents, "Please forgive my lack of filial piety. I go now to die, but my spirit will always be with you. Take care of yourselves. Long live the Emperor." Another, Captain Ryoji Yuhara, confessed in a final testament, "Tomorrow, one young life will vanish. But when I think of the honor of dying for the Emperor, my heart swells with pride. Yet I cannot stop my tears when I imagine never seeing you again." Their words were not slogans. They were human cries wrapped in duty. As the months dragged on, the kamikaze attacks intensified. In October 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, waves of suicide planes crashed into American carriers and destroyers, sending fireballs skyward and men leaping into oil-slicked seas. The USS St. Lo became the first major warship sunk by a kamikaze strike. Survivors recalled the horror of watching a plane spiral down, its pilot never wavering, even as anti-aircraft fire shredded its wings. One American sailor wrote, "We used to think they were madmen, but when you looked into their faces as they came down, you realized they were something else. They were determined." On the Japanese side, pilots prepared for their final flights with ritual precision. Many composed poems in the centuries-old tradition of tanka or haiku, short verses meant to capture eternity in fleeting words. "If I become a wave," wrote one young pilot, "I will wash against the shore of my homeland forever." They tucked these poems into their uniforms, alongside locks of hair or fingernail clippings, tokens for families to bury in their stead. At dawn, they walked calmly to their aircraft, each step carrying them closer to the moment of obliteration. A final salute, engines roaring. Then they disappeared into the sky. The climax of this campaign came in 1945 during the Battle of Okinawa. Over 1,500 kamikaze sorties were launched. American fleets endured weeks of relentless strikes, with ships erupting in fire, crews torn apart by flying shrapnel. Yet the toll on Japan was catastrophic. For every ship damaged or sunk, countless pilots perished. Few made it past the wall of flak and fighters. The sacrifice that was meant to save Japan instead drained its last reservoir of youth. By the summer, with Hiroshima and Nagasaki in ruins and surrender inevitable, the Kamikaze wings were disbanded. Their brief, terrible chapter had ended. In the aftermath, Japan mourned not only defeat but the loss of a generation. Families received wooden tablets engraved with their sons' names, memorials stood in quiet cemeteries, and schools recited the pilots' poems as lessons in loyalty. Yet in private, many parents grieved with anger. Mothers wept at the futility of lives thrown into the fire. A father was recorded saying, "My son was not a weapon. He was a boy who loved to play the flute." This duality, public honor, private sorrow, still haunts Japan's memory of the war. The legacy of the kamikaze is complex. To some, they embody the ultimate devotion, warriors who gave their lives willingly for country and emperor. To others, they are symbols of coercion, of a militarist machine that demanded the blood of its youth. Today, in Japan's Yasukuni Shrine and in small museums across the islands, their photographs hang in glass frames. Faces frozen at 19, 20, 21. They stare back across decades, asking silently whether their sacrifice had meaning, or whether it was only tragedy dressed as duty. Why does this story still matter today? Because within it lies a warning. The kamikaze were not fanatics born of myth. They were ordinary young men caught in extraordinary times, pressed between love for their families, loyalty to their nation, and the crushing machinery of war. Their final words are not just echoes from the past. They are reminders of what happens when humanity is sacrificed for ideology, when the young are asked to pay the debts of the old. As the world remembers the Pacific War, the final words of a kamikaze pilot continue to drift across time, whispers of devotion, fear, pride, and loss. They invite us not to glorify death, but to understand life, fragile and precious, even in its final moments. This episode has been crafted with care, drawing from diaries, letters, and historical accounts to bring these voices back to life. If you believe in preserving history through powerful storytelling, consider supporting this work, so that stories like these, etched in sacrifice and memory, may never be forgotten.